Hi! So we're going to be talking about the benefits of a raised trellis system. I don't think enough people talk about this because VSP is such a common thing. I'm standing next to a VSP system, vertical shoot positioning, where you have the growth vertically trained between wires, the fruiting zone and cordon around 30 inches high. This is not the cleanest version of the system because I do it myself and let the vines be a little wild, but essentially a vertical shoot system, very vigorous growth. These are Sangiovese. You can already see one thing about this. So I showed you the list, but I'm gonna bounce around a little bit. I'm standing here in the sun in the morning, in the day, and I'm completely exposed to sun. So if I'm working on these, I have a hat on because otherwise I'm squinting and it's bright and I'm getting burnt. And I'm also stooping over if I want to like work with any of these. If I'm clipping, I'm constantly bending down. If I'm doing any work on this vine, a lot of the work is down here at my knee level, or just, knee to thigh level. So those are just ergonomic things that I don't like, as well as comfort things, because I don't have any shade here. So now we're gonna walk in here to the overhead system that I've developed and talk about it and its benefits. So you can kind of see already the whole environment has changed. I'm in the shade. I can stand up in here, more or less. It's a little, in some places I can stand. And I've actually turned a VSP system into an overhead pergola system. This is only one version of a raised trellis system. Geneva Double Curtain is another one. The Watson system that I work with at Piscinus Ranch is another one. All of these share many of the same benefits, and let's just go down the list again. Number one, once you get above 30 inches, so the Geneva Double Curtain is like 1.5 meters high, it's like 44 inches. Once you get to that level, you're pretty much, a lot of your vineyard is protected from frost. So if you have an early frost, late frost, you're up above the point. The frost level will hit VSP pretty hard, and anything growing, like any new growth on a VSP cordon, will be hit hard by frost. Once you get up above that level, and the higher you get, the better protection you get. So this would be very well protected from frost. We don't have to worry about that because we're in Los Angeles in this place. But something really important to think about that we've seen repeatedly at Piscinus Ranch, we had, I want to say 4 frosts this spring, at least 4 frosts this spring, and you could see any of our new growth was just fried. Anything up here that was growing up here was beautiful. So stays warmer, or stays out of the frost zone when you have frost. Number 2, cooler on a hot day. So you can see it creates its own shade, but it's also further away from the radiant energy that is absorbed by the sun on the ground. So if you were like in the Watson system, if we had not complete shade here, the sun would be hitting the ground and heating it up. And if you're right down next to it, if you're in the VSP system, not only are you more exposed, but you're also right next to that radiant heat. So you're getting all this heat. And I think more and more heat control and shade is going to become important for fresher, delicious wines as we move into this future with extreme temperatures, changes, and hot things. So getting up here, you're further away from that radiant heat, you get more circulation. That circulation keeps the grapes cooler, but also makes the disease pressure, the mildew pressure, a lot lower. You get a lot more circulation, a lot more airflow under all of this. If this wasn't a complete garden in a Los Angeles backyard, if you're out in a vineyard situation, like a more out in the rural area, lots of airflow, reduced mildew pressure. The other thing is, as you can see here, this little critter down here is a really good example of a sheep, except he's grazing for catnip. But he can come right in here, and this is a lovely area. It creates a whole environment for him that is nice and welcoming. And if he wanted grapes, which he doesn't, but if he liked to eat grapes, they would be way out of his range. Same would go with sheep, ducks, chickens, geese, pigs, you name it. All these things have to be well managed, and that's a whole other video. You can't manage a cat, but whatever. He's going to take care of the catnip in here, the invasive catnip. But not only animals can be used in an overhead system, whether it's Geneva Double Curtain or Watson or a pergola system like this, but crops. You can see in here it's very shady, and because of that there's a lot of green. It creates its own microclimate. It's moister, it's cooler. I could be growing basil in here. I could be growing cilantro. I could be growing like shade tolerant herbs and vegetables, or with a little more spacing. I did this high density because it's a backyard again, and I wanted all this shade. I wanted to create this little garden space. But if I didn't want to do that, I could be growing in this alleyway. If I spaced things out a little more, I could be growing other crops in here that like shade, that needed a cooler, moister microclimate, and you've created that. Essentially, you're recreating a savanna system with an overhead or a raised trellis system. You're creating that idea of multi-story perennial agriculture that you're taking advantage of all of the sun's energy and maximizing your photosynthetic potential for a piece of land. So you have photosynthesis happening on the ground, photosynthesis happening up here. If we combine this with trees, we could have another story. We're gonna add a third story and have the vines raised up in trees and have another crop as well. Of course, management becomes an issue with all of these things. You have more to manage, and it makes it a more complex system, but it also makes it more resilient and multiplies the income streams that you can have. Ergonomics, I already mentioned out there. You could see I had to stoop over to do that. This one, beautiful. It's right here in front of me, right at eye level. You know, all these systems, Geneva Double Curtain is right around here. The Watson system is right around here. This one's up over head height. Anywhere from 4 feet to 2 meters is a beautiful range in terms of just like you can work here and you can work here. The only people that would be a disadvantage to is somebody who's really short. If it's up and like at a 6 foot height, then you're constantly reaching overhead, which might be better than stooping down. It's actually, studies have been shown that it increases your lung capacity by reaching up, but whatever. So ergonomics is another nice thing about these raised trellis systems. Comfort, as I said, I'm working in the shade instead of working out there in the sun. It's just a beautiful environment in here. That's why I created this way. And then just in terms of vine physiology, number 7, when you have shoots growing up, they naturally they're sending out hormones, as I understand it, as I've read, that are vegetative, not reproductive hormones. So it wants to keep growing up. You're going to constantly have to be hedging those. Whereas once you get into a raised trellis system, you're often spreading those out, because you can't just keep going vertical once you're at 5 feet, 6 feet tall. You can't just keep going up. So you got to go out, like you can see this, they're all spreading. And when they start to spread, they start to droop. And that sends a signal to the vines that they, through like the evolutionary process, have learned when you get to the top of the tree and you start drooping down, that means you can stop growing and start reproducing. So this mimics their natural evolution. You get the droop and the spreading canopy, and so you have more energy given to vegetative growth, higher quality grapes, and that's it. The only other downside, besides if you're very short in a very high trained system, is if you're not in this is a super vigorous, this is our backyard, which we've been taking care of forever. This is 3-year-old vines that are doing all this whole thing. I mean, I could have had grapes on these at 2 years because it's such rich, amazing soil. If you're in a non-vigorous site, or you're working with really non-vigorous vines, it can take longer to get them up to the trellis system. So you might add an extra year of training or 2, depending on the specifics of how high you're growing and how vigorous or not vigorous your site is. You could add an extra year or 2 of growth before you're at this level, before you're fully mature in the system. So I just think the benefits, though, well outweigh the potential negative drawbacks, the potential cons, and I see this as kind of the wave of the future. I mean, it's really, you don't have to do it in this messy overhead pergola system. You can do it in a Watson system that's really amazingly efficient and productive. There's so many ways you can do a raised system. The Geneva Double Curtain is a super productive system. It was meant for productivity, for hybrids. It was developed in New York. There's so many amazing benefits to it that I don't know why we haven't been doing it. So there you go. Benefits of a high trellis system. Hey, one bonus thing I forgot that's not on the list, but actually maybe the most important thing. So this is an extra bonus. Hopefully this is what you get for not paying attention to the list. I don't know what I'm trying to say. The point is, let's just feel the difference here. So what do you see? This is a wall. So this is the VSP system. It's a wall. I can't get through this. Like, this does not invite me to interact with the vineyard. It's an exclusionary wall or fence that I have to walk out and around. If this was a much longer row, I'd have to go way down to the end of the row to get through, or I'd have to get down on my knees and like roll under like a crazy, you know, vine burglar. The point is, the energy of this is exclusionary. It is a fence row. It is a wall. Let's go in here. Wait, the fact that we can go in here is the whole point. This is interactive, it's immersive. The energy is completely different in here. I'm in my own little magical world in here. Now, all overhead systems aren't like this. All overhead systems aren't a pergola system that creates this garden, this secret garden feel. But all overhead systems, if they're high enough, allow you to move in any direction like you're in a vine forest rather than in rows of fences that exclude you from interacting with it. To me, if you care about community engagement, if you care about, you know, human involvement in agriculture, think about the energy of what you're growing and how you're actually growing it. To me, this is just more beautiful because the energy is totally different. It's inviting, it's immersive, it feels magical. I want to take a nap in here. Like, I don't want to take a nap out there. I'll be exposed to the sun. And here, it's just lovely. And I don't know. I think that goes a long way to just the philosophy, the spirituality of farming, thinking about the energy that you're creating and the way that you can interact with your land and with the plants that you're growing and loving and caring for.